Starfield might be the best and worst game of the year. I have spent 40 hours with it now, completing the main quest line, the Crimson Fleet faction chain, most of the temples, and scattered other missions. And I cannot, Maggie, remember the last time I felt this conflicted about a work of art.
I'm sorry, can we back up? 40 hours?
Pretty much.
How long have you been playing this?
Well,
when are you playing this game?
For like a month.
Okay, I guess you've been playing it longer than I thought.
Sure.
You're right. You've been playing it for a while. In my head, see, I keep mixing up Cyberpunk and Starfield in my head. You started Cyberpunk like a week ago. And so I'm like,
Sure.
How did you get four? I was like, were you just playing this in the dark of night when I was asleep? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Burning the midnight oil.
No, I know you've been conflicted because every time I ask you, how's Starfield? You're like, it's great. And then last night you're like, this is terrible. And I'm like, I need to understand, but why are you still playing it? So I'd love to hear you talk about it.
So this is a very unusual episode for us. It's more conflicted, it's more messy, but I've done my best to organize my thoughts about this game into a tennis volley of good and bad. This is a big pros and cons situation, a point counterpoint sort of headache.
Awesome.
I'm not sure what I think about Starfield, so
Okay.
I want to talk it out. And I brought Maggie in because she has more and more experiences every day passes with open world games and RPGs.
Right. This is going to be similar to our Path of Exile episode where Cam had played the game. I had not. Cam sort of talked me through it. I asked questions, etc. So that's what's going to happen here. I haven't touched this game. The difference between this and Path of Exile, I will never play this goddamn game. I just, nothing against it. I just know it's not for me. I know it's not my kind of game,
and that's
but
fine.
I'm interested in why you liked it, why you didn't like it. I'm really excited to talk about it with you.
And there's caveats to everything here. That's
Sure.
why it's the good, bad thing. I think you'll see the structure as it sort of unfolds here. So I want to start with exploration, because that was the big good. That was the big promise going into this, was the immersion of space, the wide open frontier. You're able to go anywhere and do anything. The bad for exploration, the caveat there, the little asterisk right in the corner, is the endless loading screens. Going through almost every door, traveling to your ship multiple times to leapfrog through systems of space to get anywhere. Then you only appear in orbit above a planet, and then you have to fast travel again to land on the planet.
Yeah, I feel like every time I looked over while watching you play, it was a loading screen. A beautiful loading screen, but a lot of those.
Yeah, you know what doesn't have almost any loading screens?
Do tell.
Cyberpunk.
Ah.
It's annoying playing these games together. So the second one is art direction. So the art direction is fantastic in the environments. By that, I mean the variety of the natural worlds.
Yeah.
The colors, the lighting. It's really dazzling. And all the indoor locations are beautiful too. The buildings, the ships. In the one of the little documentary kind of clips released by the developer, they described the style they were going for as NASA punk.
Oh, cool.
Which has like a retro sort of feel to it.
Yeah.
And all the colors are gently desaturated. There's a film grain on everything. It's charming retro sci-fi, but also it still feels futuristic and clean and aspirational. I don't know. It hit a groove that I really liked.
Yeah, it was really stunning. I mean, again, I looked over and it was at our loading screen, or you were in this fantastic, beautiful setting. Like, I remember like the first planet you landed on or whatever, you told me that you were like having so much fun exploring it and running around and like finding things, and it looked really, really beautiful.
Yes. So the bad there, the caveat for art direction is the people.
Ah, the people.
The faces, Maggie. The movements, the expressions, the lack of expressiveness. It totally undermines the conversations that you're invested in, the dialogue options you're choosing, your investment in any given conversation.
So were you pretty invested in the story in this one? Because
Yes.
I know sometimes you'll just kind of skip through.
Eventually.
Okay.
Yes.
I know. I feel like you told me it took you a while to sort of get into it.
Yes, and we'll talk about that.
Okay. But so like your interest in the story was sort of dampened by the lack of facial expressions present throughout the, what are those called? NPCs?
There are about 100 reasons that the first 10 hours of the game suck.
Oh,
It's
okay.
dry, it's inaccessible, it's slow
Ugh.
in 100 different ways.
Okay.
But once it gets going, and I just started mainlining those primary quests, and I moved the story forward, then I got all caught up in it. But the art direction thing was so jarring, because as much as I loved the worlds I was traveling to, the people that were supposedly the reason that you're supposed to care about all this stuff, it was very jarring to think the environments were so beautiful and that the faces were so dreadful.
Yeah, like I would look and like the actual design of the faces looked really good, but yeah, then they talk and they're just like dead-eyeing you the whole time.
The juxtaposition I found very disruptive.
Yeah, I would almost prefer like an overly dramatic gestural character like a Hogwarts Legacy character, because they tend to like move their whole body around. Like that's better than just standing there like a I don't know, like a soulless weirdo, you know.
The next thing is planetary exploration, which you just sort of previewed.
Yeah.
Because one of the first things I did after I did sort of the little intro quest was just pick a planet, land on it, and I wanted to 100% that planet, which means running around and finding all the flora and fauna.
Finding everything you can possibly find.
Right.
Yeah.
And the promise of the game, the thing they were advertising with, is that it, not just the Skyrim in space sort of line, but that it had 1,000 planets.
Yeah.
Which feels like an endless amount of fun
That's
things
so
to do.
many. Yeah.
The bad for this planetary exploration is that these worlds are largely barren. Like they're very clearly randomly generated. And the biggest problem for exploration purposes is that there are no vehicles. So you have to spend minutes at a time just running. Just pointing at a direction and running between a couple nodes on a map. I tested this feature pretty thoroughly. I was landing and exploring and clearing outposts, investigating abandoned camps, scanning all this outlandish, stuff growing on the mountainside. That was really fun and exciting once before I started to see the limitations of it.
Okay.
The second time, it started to feel hollow. And by the end of it, it was pointless and just felt like filler. I cannot imagine doing it a third time.
Wow.
Even within the main quests, some of that exploration stuff, it was hampered by these just things they didn't need to trip over. I was roadblocked by pathways. Buildings were so labyrinthine, and I had to go find a power cell or go through these 12 different doors and find a staircase and go around another way. It was just those moments where it's a game and the game's not working properly and you can't do the next thing.
Yeah.
So you just have to troubleshoot in real time how to get to the objective.
That sounds tedious. I wouldn't enjoy it. Like there's one that's hard to do, I imagine, because it's like if you want your character or your players to really explore the world that you've made, you want it to be long and take your time and open up, avenues for curiosity and, what's this? And, let me find my way around here. But if you do it just slightly wrong, it gets so annoying and tedious.
Right. So then that 1,000 planet line becomes a threat.
Yeah, you're like, there are 1,000 of these? Oh, God.
Once it feels, that's a great word, once it feels like tedium, then it's a death sentence to have to go through all those things. But I think I saved this experience by really pivoting hard into the main quest line.
Okay.
And that was another good, is the main story. Chasing the secrets of these hidden artifacts throughout the universe, the camaraderie of me and my crew, which was called Constellation. I really enjoyed that flow.
Okay.
The bad was, and this is what I mentioned earlier, the beginning of the game, which could not have been more dry and unwelcoming. But when it does get going, when you do immerse yourself in the main story plot, then all of that side content that was like the selling factor of the game, it almost started hampering the main experience. Because having an endless amount of ancillary, increasingly tedious side content undermined any sense of urgency of the main story.
Yeah.
Because there are these bad guys, sort of aliens. I'm just kind of roughshotting over the story,
sure.
But just because I know you don't care at all about sci-fi.
Thank you for understanding me.
There are these entities from other universes or whatever called the Starborn.
Okay.
Right, and eventually they attack you because they want these artifacts that you're going to get.
Oh, okay.
So you have to choose, do I go save part of my crew in a space station or part of my crew in our little lodge home base on a planet?
Oh, geez.
And then you have to go to the other place and see what's left of that part of your crew and who died.
Wow.
And that developed such urgency in this battle with the Starborn because you knew they were chasing you. You knew they would attack you. And anytime you clear a temple and get a new artifact, there's a big bad Starborn guy waiting outside when you leave that you have to fight. And that made it almost feel like a chase sequence. It had like an Empire Strikes Back thing of I'm being tailed through these universes trying to assemble a collection of these artifacts. And then I got off on a side quest thing in between one of those main quests, and I realized they're just going to sit there for like the next 1,000 hours if I want.
Until you're done with your side quest.
And there is no chase.
So it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah, it's like an illusion you have to create. You have to put that sort of timer on yourself.
Yeah.
And I understand that gives you freedom in an open world. And maybe this is just a downside of open worlds, but I felt that more here. I felt the suspension of disbelief for the main narrative much more here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is tough. Like, you're right. That is a fault of an open world game. But I think that just means that when you're writing your main story, you have to keep that in mind.
Yes.
Like, you can't write it like it's not an open world when it's in an open world game. Like, I've had that before in things like Hogwarts Legacy, for example, right? Like, I keep bringing that up because
it's the most recent open world game you've played.
Yeah, it is. And we've been talking ad nauseum about Diablo, so I'm not going to talk about Diablo. But like, there would be like important plot beats, but they were never all that timely. Or if they were timely, it was like, this is one quest that you like can't stop until you finish. Like if it's like, going through one of those trials or whatever, and so like you can't stop until it's done. So it's like, okay, meet me at this place, sometime, and it's never urgent. Right. So you're like, okay, I'll do that eventually. I'll do some side quests, but eventually I go there, and then I know that's going to be my main quest, and then exciting things are going to happen. But there isn't really much urgency because like for the whole time, it's like, oh, I'm like trying to like be a student and like pass my classes and like play Quidditch. So it's like the stakes are high when you're in it, but there's no urgency when you're in between quests. And so you have to write like that. And I think like that's a mistake the way that they've written the game.
Because you can design it for that. For that, it's not even a problem of attention span. It's just creating almost episodic main quests.
Right.
So that they have a clean off-ramp at the end, where an intermission of maybe a bunch of other quests or emergent quests that pop out of nowhere. For example, I was doing the main quest, and in the course of that, I developed a bounty on my head, and then I got arrested by the space police, and that trailed into a bunch of other really cool quests. But that was the moment, because I just followed that side stuff for 7 or 8 hours. When I went back to the main stuff, it's like, oh, I just sat here. He just went back on the shelf. It wasn't real.
Yeah.
That sort of broke the immersion for me. And I think there is a way you could have felt it. You could have made it feel more curated or directed or clean. So you can take easier breaks from it.
Or you just, if you're going to have that like urgent thing where you have to make this big decision and it has to go quick, you kind of have to keep that all in one thing.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't be able to leave that part of the quest until you finish that because it does break that immersion.
Yeah. The going into some more gameplay things now. Okay. The item variety was great. I thought that was awesome. That loop of finding and collecting items, whether it was new types of weapons, new variants of weapons with different scopes or items attached to them. Yeah. I loved looting for ammo and medical supplies. It was just very pleasing to me because then I would go into a big encounter and be like, this gun I love, I have 1,500 bullets for it now. And it feels like it's a tangible reward.
Of course. Yeah, finding new fun gear is always going to be exciting, easy dopamine in a game. That's great.
And these sort of games where, there's a bunch of stuff on every desk and you can look at all of it.
Cool.
That level of looting has usually turned me off. I usually hate that. Like Borderlands is sort of my limit for how much looting I can do.
Okay.
But I liked it here. I liked that item variety. The bad is the ridiculously small inventory you get.
That's annoying.
You just cannot collect things.
Oh.
Almost anything.
Then why would you have so much stuff?
Unless you just constantly slow walk, because when you're carrying too much, you can't run anymore, or fast travel. So you have to slow walk.
You can't fast travel?
I don't think so.
That's ridiculous.
You have to. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think I am.
Okay.
Because I never let myself get over encumbered. Right. If I would just stop everything and have to, play with the menus for 20 minutes.
Was there anything you could do to increase your inventory size?
Yes, by spending the precious skill points you had.
Oh, that's right.
And we'll get to that too.
Skill
but that sucked.
Points to increase that doesn't make... I'm sorry. That makes no sense.
I know. Okay. Right. So even if you did all of that, you would still fill up stuff real quick. Because the things you really cared about, like a new spacesuit or a new jetpack or any of that, those were the heavy things. Or resources that you'd come across, like different metals that you would need to craft upgrades for your current gear. Obviously, aluminum is heavier than you're collecting pencils or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So you really couldn't collect anything. And after a while, I would get the ammo. I would get the health stuff because ammo's, it doesn't weigh anything in your inventory.
Oh, okay.
I would get that stuff and just admire and then leave behind everything else.
That's so frustrating. Like, what's the point of having all this cool stuff if you can't collect it and like play around with it? And
so it just became set decoration. But even if you did collect it, what the hell would you do with it anyway, except sell it or just eventually trash it from your inventory?
I suppose, yeah.
It was very frustrating because it made the whole system, which is initially so immersive and impressive, it made it feel so shallow.
Yeah. It just feels like that part wasn't like fully thought out in a really intentional way.
Similarly, in this theme of things looking great and then not being great, the good is the combat.
Okay.
Better than ever for a Bethesda game. The gunplay, the design and variety of the weapons, the recoil, the scopes, the feedback, just that sort of X Factor feel of combat was better.
Okay.
The bad, the combat. Still sucks. It's
what was
because
bad about it?
When I say it's good, I mean it's good compared to Fallout and Skyrim.
Okay.
And I think Skyrim has the worst combat in any game I've ever played.
I agree. I mean, my amount of things to choose from is smaller than yours, but I can't stand the combat in Skyrim.
But when I was reflecting on this, my bread and butter is like sci-fi shooters, looters.
It's Destiny.
Yes, exactly. It's basically sci-fi combat. So if you're going to shoot me up to the moon and give me a bunch of cool laser guns, I'm comparing it to Halo, Destiny, Gears of War, Titanfall, and Doom. Doom, which is kind of made by the same company as this, and they have the best feeling gameplay, and this just doesn't. Ooh. It just isn't smooth, clean, satisfying. You look over and see me playing Destiny. I know it's too fast for you, but doesn't it look fluid?
It looks really, really fluid, yeah. It looks, and like this is a compliment, it looks like I'm going to get seasick playing that game. I get the same way with Doom as well.
It's quick, yeah.
But like, yeah, I would look at this at Starfield, and I mean, again, I'm not playing it, so it's hard to tell, but like, it looked a little clunky. It's just
stiff.
Yeah, but you got like that cool pistol that one time. Like you got some cool weapons that did some cool things.
But I got a pistol that basically one-shotted enemies.
Cool.
Which was good because you didn't really have to engage with the combat. Because if you just hit them once,
I guess that's not really a compliment, is it? Yeah, like it was over quick. Yeah, yeah.
Because it's just stiff, clunky, floaty. It's wooden in a way that great shooting mechanics aren't.
Yeah, wooden like the faces of all the people. Like seriously.
Yes, it was for those of you in the audience, the combat is closer to like BioShock.
Okay.
Which is much more an RPG than it is a shooter.
Okay.
So it is a little more floaty in the gunplay.
Is BioShock that steampunky one?
It is.
Where they're up in the air and there's stuff happening?
That's the third one. The first two are underwater. Rapture. You'd actually, I think you'd really like BioShock now.
Okay.
It's got horror. It's got big ideas. It's very cool. The next good of this game, which is something again has already come up in conversation, is the skill upgrades.
Right.
I really liked that I got the ability to target my upgrades to cater to my playstyle. I could directly upgrade the efficiency of certain weapon types. I could, I never like stealth. I hate stealth more than anything. I like just going in loud. That's why I like Destiny.
You're so funny. I love being stealthy. If I can kill everybody while I'm like fully invisible and just one and done, that's my favorite.
But I could upgrade my character in a way that suited that playstyle, which I liked.
That's
so
awesome.
I could do more of what I wanted and it would be more effective.
That's really cool.
The bad of the skill upgrades is that you have to spend like your first dozen, and I only got to level 32, I think, by the end of the game. You have to spend your first dozen or so on basic quality of life features that we take for granted in every other modern game. 3 or 4 of these just to make your inventory upgraded and tolerable for walking around.
Ugh.
Even more to make like decent reloading for weapons. You had to get all the way to the bottom of a skill tree. So you had to upgrade nodes all the way and have a certain number of points in this tree to be able to slowly regenerate health, instead of completely relying on the med kits you find occasionally throughout the world.
That's dumb.
And you just have to slam those during combat to keep going.
So without doing all of that, you don't there's no default, you slowly regenerate health, like you have to get... That's dumb.
Uh-huh.
I know, listen, I know that game developers, they're trying to create an immersive world. Obviously let me back up. In real life, you do naturally get better. Like, that's how bodies work. Like, if your bone is broken, yeah, you have to like fix it. And like, obviously medicine helps, but like the body naturally repairs itself over time. So the fact that you just don't heal at all without like help, that's stupid.
And these problems compound, right? Because the first 10 hours is really slow in the main story, but it's also frustrating with the combat and the item variety when you can't collect anything and your inventory is always full.
Yeah.
So this slow upgrade path, this really glacial progression, means that you're just frustrated and fighting it for the first 10 hours when you're most likely to drop off.
Yeah, so you're just like working and working to make the game enjoyable and to make the game run the way it's supposed to run. And that feels strange.
Right, and for the amount of skills available in the game, I should probably have double the unlocks that I do by this point.
Yeah, because you completed the campaign, right?
And and did a bunch of other shit. And most of the skills are untouched here. Ugh. So it's very stingy, and you have to do a bunch of them just to improve basic quality of life.
Yeah, I don't love that. I mean, games don't need to hold your hand and stuff, but like, you should start out being able to like fucking survive and like do what you need to do. And then as you level up and get new skills, you become like more powerful and very, very cool.
The thing that most games would do, you know how movies, like if it's a horror movie, they'll give you a really scary shot up front just to sort of get you excited.
Yeah,
Games like the ones I compared to earlier, they would usually give you just a quick hit of the power fantasy in the first mission.
Yeah.
So you'd have really good weapons. Your suit would be all kitted out, and you'd be powerful.
Yeah.
And then you'd lose all of that in the inciting incident. And then you'd have to slowly build that stuff up.
But you know like what you're working towards.
You know it can be good. But what I know playing a Bethesda game is that it can be terrible.
You like have no faith the whole way through.
Right, in the combat, in the basic gameplay. And I know I just have to grit my teeth and ride through it. This combat became much better than their previous games, but I had to just grit my teeth through like 10 hours of it. For a game that they've spent so long making and delaying and fixing and tweaking, it feels so half-baked. Because all of these systems that they built that you can engage with to play here, they're interesting. And I feel like I could fully explore a character in a way that I really can't in any other RPG, except maybe something like Cyberpunk. But even that is less deep than it is here. You have different benches, like upgrade benches, where you can tinker with and upgrade all your weapons, your spacesuit, all of the parts of your equipment that you're running around with. There are environmental damages you can take to your body. You can get frostbite. You can get burns.
Oh, cool. That's interesting.
And you can treat all of those things with a variety of medical supplies. Okay. I broke a leg trying to climb a mountain in the first half hour, and then I just walked like shit. And I didn't, and this is the bad, of course. There's a total lack of tutorials on how to move through these systems and interact with them.
I hate that.
So I just had to Google it and figure out what I needed to fix my dislocated arm or whatever it was.
Oh, man, I think we need to just make games more accessible, period.
Yeah.
There just needs to be more. I mean, I know that many games now have lots of accessibility options and toggles, and that's great, but just give me tutorials, and if I don't want it, let me skip it.
Yes.
But don't make me have to fucking Google how to do something in the game. That's really bad.
Yeah, and never mind all of the crafting mechanics, which are arcane
I
and
saw
exhaustive.
you struggling.
That's the next
okay,
thing
I'm sorry. I'll hold off.
No,
it's a little teaser for the next topic.
That's half of why I wanted you on this episode. But yeah, it's just that sense. I mean, I have an intuition for playing most games. I don't mean that I'm brilliant, but you play a certain number of games for enough decades and you kind of know what you're doing. I can brute force my way through even a completely new genre or subgenre.
Yeah, and that's a skill that I don't really have because I've only really been gaming for 10 years at this point.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I shouldn't have felt like I was stumbling through so much of this game. Constantly Googling. I mean, in aggregate, the game feels cold and unclear, distant and unwelcoming. And nowhere is that contradiction more evident than in the ship combat. So that's my last major good for the game, is the ship combat.
Okay.
I loved it. It's fun.
Okay.
It gives you cool Star Wars stuff. You can be first person. You can be right in the cockpit and see the windows above you. You can see all the machines and bips and bobs and tools. Or you can be in third person and, see the thrusters and move all around. You can dogfight. You can hail other ships and negotiate with them or shit talk them or threaten them. You can dock with space stations, and it does the whole interstellar thing of the slow-mo dock.
So which one did you do? Did you do first person?
Mostly third, just because I like having that extra visibility.
That's what I would have done too.
You can lock on to enemy ships and then fire your missiles and your lasers, and it was fun. Cool. I really liked ship combat, and I really don't usually like ship combat.
Yeah. I'm surprised to hear that. That's really cool.
The bad is that the ship builder, which you have to use to modify or upgrade your ships, and there are certain points in the campaign where it will not let you progress unless you have, for example, a grav drive where you can jump between solar systems.
Oh, sure, a grav drive. I know what that is.
Well, that's why I explained it.
My point is that the game is not explaining things.
It tells you your jump range between different solar systems, and you need to upgrade it at one point to get to a new faraway place.
Okay, cool.
So you do have to interact with this system. I thought it was cosmetic because some people are going to spend hundreds of hours making a perfect Millennium Falcon.
Sure.
But this is not optional. The ship builder might be the most outdated and incomprehensible system I have ever used. You were there last night.
I was watching.
I spent 1 hour of my brief life on this planet trying to install a better grav drive. And then I couldn't leave the shipbuilder even when I did figure that out because I didn't have 3 weapons assigned on my ship. The problem is that when I bought this ship, it only had 2 weapons assigned. So I didn't know what it was talking about. Googling, stumbling, riffing. I ripped apart half of the ship trying to figure out how to rewire it to make the crew members couldn't get somewhere.
Right, then
from
the
deck
cockpit
and
had
the cockpit.
to be connected to the thing, and I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, I don't know what any of these things are. And you're trying to it was very, very, very clunky.
Yes.
And again, you told me there was no tutorial on how this ship building system works, and that is really, really bad.
It ground the entire experience to a halt.
Yeah, and that was the last part of the campaign, right? You were about to finish the game, and it was slow down for an hour while you Lego build your ship.
And it was like looking at graph paper in 3D space, trying to move a cursor around and rotate the ship, and I was getting seasick doing it. I was having depth perception issues on the couch. Maybe
it's easier on PC, but you got to make it workable for console.
Right. When it's an Xbox exclusive, I would hope so.
Oh, yeah.
It was just woefully counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It was a nightmarish experience. I hated it.
Yeah.
And I have no idea why it was designed like that.
Yeah, it's I think it's really great that it sounds like it was a really intense, intricate system that it sounds like some people have spent a lot of time in and had a lot of fun in, but you have to make it workable and usable for just even people trying to play the game.
Even the terms on the pieces of the ship, when we were scrolling through it, none of them meant anything.
It didn't mean anything. It didn't make any sense. I was like, this is all fake. I know I'm sure it's based in how actual spaceships work and shit.
This isn't even real.
But I'm like, this is a fake planet game. This is fucking Star Wars, but less I don't know, less cool. And it was just
now it's homework.
What are we doing? Yeah, I could see how agonized you were, and I would have thrown the Xbox out the window. But I'm not doing this. I'm not spending my time on this.
So that's 9 departments where there's something great and then 100 caveats and just baggage weighing it down. So I have a little closer here that I just sort of vomited out these thoughts, and then at the end I'll open it up because I want your thoughts on some of this.
Incredible.
But
okay.
This is sort of me trying to make sense of this. This is my conclusion.
Okay.
I have been trying to love a Bethesda game since 2008, Fallout 3, which I bought day one. I got the version with a lunchbox and all the. I was very excited, Maggie. I don't think you understand.
I can envision it. I know exactly what you looked like.
I loved that lunchbox.
I'm very happy for you.
And this was before YouTube and independent reviews.
Sure.
So you see the IGN review, and then you go drop a bunch of money on it, and if it's not good, it's not good.
Yeah.
And you don't know until you play it.
No idea, yeah.
Fallout 3, I couldn't click with the way I wanted. Fallout 4, Skyrim, I played all of these things, and now Starfield. And all of those games, the thing that kind of binds them together is that they all hold incredible promise and possibility. They are, compared to any other game, any other developer, they are fully realized fantasy and science fiction worlds that you can step into and actually get lost in. They give you the ability to tell your own stories and carve your own path through these wild, immersive, escapist universes in a way that no other medium is able to offer. But each and every time, I have bounced off of these titles. And it makes me feel quite sad. The combat, to me, is atrocious.
Yeah.
The systems are opaque. The bugs are constant and distracting. And you get these like whack-a-mole spikes in difficulty and balancing issues, speaking of Diablo, that just spiraled the experience into frustration and disappointment.
Well, yeah. I mean, also speaking of Diablo, like our biggest problem with Diablo is that, I mean, go back and listen to all of our episodes because we've done a bunch on Diablo 4. I'm speaking specifically Diablo 4. Our biggest disappointment was that there's so much potential in that game. It could have been an amazing game. There were so many great things. And then there were a bunch of things that really brought it down and let it down. And it sounds like that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing if it's like, okay, this game is bad. But when you see how it can be so good and then it's not, that's really, really frustrating.
And it just leaves me in this sort of melancholic place. When I think of these games, when I think of Fallout, Skyrim, or I guess Diablo 4, I feel hopeful but sad because they're never anywhere close to what they could be. They never realize that awesome potential, the promise that I laid out earlier. They never quite live up to it. And like Starfield is full of problems and drawbacks. That's why I wanted to list them out like that. But in some ways, it's even worse than Bethesda's previous games. But it is also the first one of their titles that has ever truly captured me.
I was going to say, you finished this game.
Yes. Which I haven't for the other ones.
And you don't just like, if you're not liking a game, you'll stop playing it. Like you have no problem DNFing a game, as the book community says.
Which I cannot do for a book or a show or a movie.
Right, like you usually are like finishing up. But with games, you're like, I'm not going to waste my time on this. But you finished this game and it didn't take you that long. It's not like you slogged through it for 6 months.
Right.
You finished it in like a month.
And I did truly wander through the game and care about what was happening. It's the first one of their games I've really enjoyed and wondered at and thought about in the rest of my day. The combat is better, and thankfully there's more of it. It's not just that messy exploration where you can't pick anything up.
Okay.
It's more of that combat, which is better than it used to be. And the art direction is, like Diablo 4, unforgettable and unmistakable. I think they're both artistic highlights as far as the visuals.
Yeah.
I've never had to put so much work into loving a game. I've never had to overlook so many issues and meet a work of art halfway on almost every aspect.
Yeah.
But for my trouble, I have had a pretty amazing experience. When I was going in between main quests and I got arrested, and I then embarked on a 7 or 8 hour side quest chain of working undercover to infiltrate a fleet of space pirates, pulling off heists and break-ins, going to all these different realms and areas. It was amazing.
Yeah, you talked very highly about that part. You seemed really excited when you were playing that little bit, and it sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah, the Crimson Fleet. It was cool. It's a cool name. The people are mean. It was fun.
Yeah.
Trailing through mines and like rusted out fortresses. At one point, I wish I was recording this part for the YouTube video. I do have some cool footage from the end for the YouTube video, but I was sprinting through an exploding space station at the end of the universe that was like engulfed in flames.
Wow.
And these freaky robots were still trying to shoot me while they were melting down. I was zapping through dimensions and timelines, talking to a doomed crew in the moments before a disaster struck, and then zapping into the aftermath and helping the lone survivor of this like burned out facility. And jumping in between those, because in the afterward time, when half the building was destroyed, I couldn't get to where I needed to get in the building. So I had to time travel to the other realm and talk to all these people saying, hey, I was just talking to Eric over there. And they're like, Eric is the guy who's dead. So one guy was dead in this timeline, and in the other timeline, all the people I was talking to who were alive before the disaster were dead.
Wild.
So, like, those are really fun ideas.
That's so cool.
And sequences to play with. I did the whole equestrian for my main companion, which was Barrett, solving the mystery of his husband's death and battling these huge freaky scorpions through this ruined dark mine. I just had my favorite laser gun and a flashlight, and these freaky scorpions would jump out of everywhere. It was awesome.
Cool.
I was blazing through the rainbow of time and space, acquiring magical, metaphysical powers. I feel so conflicted about this game because it just ricocheted in every sequence. I was awestruck. I was frustrated. I was impressed. I was disappointed. And I think that I like your observation about me not finishing a lot of these other games.
Yeah.
Because this is the new genre, is the massive open world game. Everything is kind of open world now.
At this point, yeah.
Which means that no one completes games because you can't. I mean, I put like 120 hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah.
I know almost no one else did that.
Yeah.
And I didn't scratch the surface on it. I'm sure you could dump 500 hours if you wanted to get everything in that game.
Yeah.
But there is no earthly reason to do any of that. Even I probably did more than I should have, just because I really liked that world.
Interesting. And that's so frustrating because that means these developers are like putting all of this time and effort into making these, like crafting these beautiful, like expansive worlds, but less time on like making sure the gameplay is really, really good.
But also sometimes people look up how long it takes to beat a game. And if it's not past a certain threshold of 50 hours or 100 hours, then they think they're getting ripped off and they don't buy it. So sometimes developers have a really good game and they have to pad it out with other stuff to just give what looks like a fuller experience. Because playing something like Ratchet and Clank, which I did a couple months ago, that was like a 10-hour experience. But you were literally walking through a Pixar movie. It was the most visually astounding thing I've ever seen. And it was a very brief experience. But it was great. Like, who cares how long it is? It was great, and it felt like a complete movement, a complete artistic vision. These massive open world games, they end whenever you want them to. Like, I know, and that means most people don't finish the campaign. I got the achievement when I finished the main quest. It was like 9% of people got this achievement.
Just
that
for like
sucks,
finishing the game?
because that was the best part that made the whole thing come full circle. That sold me on the game. And I know there's a lot more to Starfield, but I'm happy with the time I put into it.
Yeah.
The main campaign, the Crimson Fleet quest, Barrett's quest chain, they were all highlights for me. But I know that if I continued with this game for another month, another whatever, the bad parts would quickly outweigh the good parts.
Yeah,
Those quality of life issues, the bafflingly designed systems, the hollowness that like creeps in during the downtime when you're just on planets and you realize it's all fake and all being randomly generated, that hollowness that just, it makes you feel like you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Like, I've made my peace with this game, and I think it's the closest that Bethesda has ever gotten to realizing that boundless potential, that exhilarating promise that all of their games hold. And I hope that their next game, which is the next Elder Scrolls game, the sequel to Skyrim, I hope that one's even better. Yeah. And I hope maybe a few years of patches and bug fixes and redesigns and streamlining and tutorials can make Starfield the kind of game that I would want to come back to and replay, or maybe even complete. But until then, I am more than happy to move on to other adventures.
Yeah.
Starfield is not good or bad. It's great and terrible. It's probably the best and worst game of 2023.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, but it does sound like their next game might be even better. So it does give us a little bit of hope.
That since 2008.
But you finished this one.
I did.
And that is and you didn't finish it just for the sake of like finishing it, right? You didn't finish it just to do an episode on it. Like,
no.
You weren't planning on doing an episode about it.
No,
You just wanted to play.
That's why I only recorded gameplay from the last mission.
Because you were like, oh shit, I actually want to talk about this. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I really admire you for completing this game, even though it was so frustrating. But I'm glad that there were so many things you loved about it, and I hope that Bethesda continues to make better games and that they really live up to their potential.
I took a bunch of screenshots while I was playing.
Oh, cool!
Like throughout, and I'm going to put those in the YouTube video. I'm going to have those cycle through because the variety and the visuals are incredible.
Yeah, it's a beautiful game. Like.
Yeah.
For the visuals alone, like that's awesome.
And I think it could get to that spot where I admire it like I do all those other series I love. But yeah. Yeah, that's my time, my month with Starfield.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you, you have not convinced me to play this game. I will never be playing this game.
I would never try to.
It's not even because of the gameplay. It's like the sci-fi alone is just not. It's not going to do it for me. But
this is why I'm glad we don't do reviews. Because I'm not reviewing or recommending anything.
Should you play Starfield?
No.
Is it worth it?
I'm telling you about my experience with it.
Right, yeah. Well, tell us about your experience, listener. Comment below on YouTube if you're on YouTube. If you're on Patreon, you can comment on there. Or otherwise, if you're just listening to this as a podcast, you can send us an email, secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram at secondbreakfastpod. We do have a Patreon, as I mentioned. You get bonus episodes every month.
A whole back catalog of exclusive bonus episodes if you check us out there.
Plus, you get to hear about things earlier than other people, so that's pretty cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to compliment you on that beautiful transition into the plugs.
Thank you. It's like you've been doing this for 3 years.
We will be we will be back on Friday with a brand new episode.
Yep.
And as always, thank you for listening and joining us on this conflicted journey through the world or worlds of Starfield.
All right.
We'll
see you on Friday.
Back to Cyberpunk.
I can't wait. Are we going to do a Cyberpunk episode?
Probably not.
Okay. Incredible.
Unless I go on a vision quest with it like I did with this one.
Amazing.
Hopefully I can just enjoy that one in peace.
If you want us to talk about Cyberpunk, let us know.
That's a great point, Maggie.
All right.
See you Friday.
Toodaloo.
Bye.
Bye.